great to have you on. Nirav, great to have you on. So welcoming Nirav Sheth, Emkay Global Financial, into our conversation. We have a fantastic panel this morning right after markets open to talk about what's going on. Nirav, today is the day many will come and say, I always had faith in India. But there was a moment there which was looking fairly scary. The fact is that a lot of top brokerages have lowered their Nifty outlook. They've lowered their GDP outlook for India. They've increased their inflation outlook. All of the above has happened. Does this 2-week ceasefire merit re-looking at some of those views?
Yeah, even without the ceasefire, right? So I think we tend to overestimate the impact of these short-term events. So this is not the first time that a war has happened in the world, right? So you've seen so many ththings. I don't think that last time we are going to see anything worse than what happened in pandemic, right? And we have gone through that. But anyway, so it's just look at it, right? The last 2 or 3 days, despite the global headlines was obviously getting, the narrative was something else, and the markets are fairly resilient. So markets are very, very forward looking. So, how much at the end of the day, the question that you need to ask yourself is that how much of 1 or 2 quarter cash flows are you going to consider when you try and value the cash flows of a company over a lifetime? So to answer your question, you'll downgrade over the next 1 or 2 quarters, and then you'll upgrade. The markets will be far smarter, right? So we have seen a derating leading into the war. You'll see a re-rating now, even though earnings may catch up only after 2 quarters. And I'm fine with that.
Okay. So, all right. So that's an important point. Gurmeet, on that note, I thank you so much for taking the time on this busy morning. And I think the next thing we're looking forward to is monetary policy. So there's certainly an action-packed morning. Pankaj, I want to come to you ahead of the IT earnings season as well. And at least for a short while, and I know that you track this very, very closely, particularly the relatively smaller players. What would you do with this right now? Because it's not necessarily performed as some people might have anticipated. It got beaten down and got pulled back maybe amidst this conflict as a defensive buy. On the structural standpoint, though, how would you treat the IT pack?
Well, Alex, we continue to remain positive on IT as a sector. I think the sell-off that happened, let's say in February, was more out of the fear of unknown, where the market fear was completely mispriced. Some global software companies might get impacted or disrupted because of AI. And market has this tendency of overblowing fear and probably painting everything with the same brush. But that is not the case with IT services companies. In fact, we firmly believe, I'm a firm believer that AI will augment business for IT services companies. So I think while you're right that in the last few weeks or months, IT has been a great defensive in a market which was otherwise challenged. But I think from a slightly more medium-term or longer-term perspective, and as you said, structurally, I think this is a great opportunity to buy into IT sector, because valuations now in the sector after a very long time are closer to where we had seen them during global financial crisis in 2008. Directionally, in terms of business performance, we clearly think that the current year 27 will be better than 26, and we see a improving growth trajectory for companies. Deal wins has been very strong for the sector as a whole over the last 4 or 6 quarters, and probably at some point of time, as AI diffusion increases, the growth trajectory for this company will improve. So I think it's a great opportunity for investors having a slightly more medium-term perspective to be investing into IT companies.
Pankaj, would you look at financials favorably now? Financials and some of your, do you have a list in your mind of those stocks that were beaten down terribly because of the Middle East crisis, which will now rebound? And L&T, Indigo, I know you won't take specific names, but that bucket of stocks, which are very obvious to all, which will see an immediate rebound, because clearly the Strait of Hormuz is now going to be reopened and stay open in some form or fashion.
Well, Tamanna, I am fully invested. I don't have money to invest. Okay, having said that, I think financials is a must buy. What we've seen in the month of March was when you get, and it's very logical that when you get a macroeconomic shock, financials is the first sector in any economy to get hit, and we saw very sharp underperformance where financials fell much more than the Nifty index. We don't see asset quality concerns in the sector. I think the balance sheets of banks and banking sector is probably one of the finest that I have seen in a very long time. Yeah, valuations are very reasonable, and we are already seeing signs of improving credit growth. Credit growth for year ended March 26 or FY26 at about close to 14% is much higher than 11% that we saw a year before. I think we are in the midst of a recovery as far as credit growth is concerned. So I think, and valuations are very reasonable in financials. So in that backdrop, definitely yes, I think financials is a must buy given the way the sector has been beaten down. Undoubtedly. And obviously, as you rightly said, some of these stocks have had a disproportionate brunt, including L&T, because they have a large piece of business in Middle East. And probably autos is a sector which was again beaten down because of the fear of higher fuel prices having a demand shock. While we might still have some fuel price increase to pass on because the new normal for probably oil will be much higher, somewhat higher than what we had before that. But I think it's a shock which consumers and economy can absorb and we can sail through it. So autos have been beaten down as well, including auto anchors. So I see a lot of opportunities there as well.
Pankaj, it's a little tough to believe when Pankaj Murarka comes and says, I don't have money to invest.
But because he's fully invested.
Yeah,
he's fully invested. That brings me back to the point of whether it's time to take something off the table or not. But I mean, I really don't know.
It's a good time to be fully invested, I think.
It's a good time to be fully invested. I know. So I want to go to Nirav, but there is an interesting, just before I get to... Yeah, sorry, Pankaj. Yeah, sure.
You would have asked this question to one of my ex-mentors, the late Mr. Junjunwala. He would have said, this is the time to borrow money and invest more if you don't have money.
I wonder if Nirav Sheth is telling that to his clients, but okay, there is some flashes on your screen which bring out what Donald Trump is saying, Tamanna, Alex.
Yeah.
An interesting point. So one line stood out for me. I don't know what stood out for you, but amongst everything else, big money will be made. Is Donald Trump saying that?
He has already made it, possibly. Okay, another thing that stood out for me, we're reading out what he's saying. Big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Likewise, so has everyone else. United States of America. This stood out for me. United States of America will be helping with the traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action. Interesting that the line that Niraj saw was big money will be made.
I'm not surprised.
Iran can start the reconstruction process. We'll be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well. I feel confident that it will. Just like we're experiencing in the US, this could be the golden age of the Middle East. I mean,
I'm surprised the one line is missing.
I know, I was just going to say, thank you for your attention to this matter.
There is more than enough attention to this matter.
No, Nirav Sheth, what do you make of, all the reconciliatory off-ramp statements that have now come in the last 24 hours, if you will? Israel did it 3 days back as well, that our objectives are achieved. Do you believe, and it's all a hypothesis, right, Nirav? Are you making that hypothesis that this is the end of the hostility and therefore a start of what could be a bull market? Pankaj is saying time to borrow and put money into the market. Would you say the same?
So you're asking the wrong person, because I was wrong in my assessment. I would not have expected the war to last such a long time. Think of it. You are able to take out the top leadership in first 24 hours of the war, right? It is such an asymmetric war. And absolutely, I have no doubt that if you want, US can actually bomb Iran to the Stone Age. There is no doubt about it. You're just trying to avoid any civilian casualties. So this has defied out logic, no matter what, right? So, and please, at least the way I look at it, right, is that Iran doesn't have a chance to survive this. The only thing that you are trying to legitimately do is that when a ceasefire is announced, you expect that you'll be able to rule the country post-ceasefire. Because no one is going to try and come out of the streets once the war is on. But once the ceasefire is called, you can see a social unrest happening, and you need money for that. Right? So this is a lot of this. Please think of it that the GDP of Iran is $400 billion. The reconstruction cost is somewhere close to $120, $130 billion. Where do you have that kind of money? Right? So these had to come to an end. I have no doubts about it. So I am completely in sync with what Pankaj says, that you should be borrowing and putting the money right now. And for all you know, the markets could again tank for 2 or 3% tomorrow, depending on what happens after the next 15 days. 3 months out, 6 months out, you are willing to thumb the table and say that you'll be significant in the money.
Okay, interesting. So Nirav, Pankaj has given us a small idea of where is it that he's finding favor. Where is it that you, as somebody who's advising large institutions, would find favor at the current context?
Yeah, so the only thing that I differ with Pankaj, in my view, is that I am still very terribly bullish on IT. So anything that gets disrupted, I don't even bother to look at valuations.
Nirav, I must say, sorry to interrupt you, but I must say it takes something for somebody to be more bullish than Pankaj on IT. So if that is indeed the case, then it's kudos. But yeah, please finish your point.
No, so I am happy to go wrong, but the sector is getting disrupted. Actually, if you ask me, the only thing that worries me about India is that you don't have any play in AI. That is something real, that is profound, that will change. It is very, very distributive over the next 5 or 10 years, right? And I'm not even talking about AGI. You don't need to go to AGI. So to me, it is a disinflationary shock. I'm not saying that, it's not a binary call on IT. It's not that, they'll stop growing. But the fact of the matter is that they are running on a treadmill. So you'll have disinflationary impact and then you'll have some volume uptake. But they have become X growth as far as I'm concerned. So, right. So this is all, we're trying to focus the future and therefore happy to go wrong. But outside IT, you can be bullish on almost everything, right? And please understand that you can also now try and start looking at bottom-up stories. As a matter of fact, L&T, I think, could get significantly because you would expect now Middle East to try and find an alternate to the Strait of Hormuz. You've seen a template in terms of what happens, right? So you will try and see that there are alternative pipelines and stuff like that, right? So there are a lot of reconstruction that is going to happen. In India, there is a lot of, I mean, how could you even conceive of a situation that you are running out of LPG in 2 weeks? I mean, how the hell you don't have a 6 months storage plan in India?
So there will
so all these things going to come in.
There will be a lot of things that change in the interim. Absolutely. So good points that are being made. And of course, I know that Pankaj will have a lot to say about IT and artificial intelligence, but we're going to have to couch that conversation, perhaps pick it up after the IT earnings season, because we have to head into the coverage of the Reserve Bank of India's monetary policy review, which we've kind of pushed to the back burner for a short while. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking the time. Pleasure speaking with you as always.